Hello and welcome to another Bionicle video. Today we're dipping back into the dark and twisted world of Shadow Toa for some more sinister rebuilds of classic sets. So far we've seen the Shadow Toa, Shadow Toa Nuva, Shadow Takanuva and even the Shadow Asanui. So what's next? Well, we can't quite tackle the Shadow Toa Metru, at least not until I can get my hands on some custom black Metru masks. And a lot of you guys have been asking about custom light Toa, who would make awesome enemies for the Shadow Toa to fight, but again I don't want to fully tackle those guys until we have enough parts for the full team. So where do we go from here? Well, 2002 saw two iconic vehicles added to the Bionicle universe, the Exo Toa and the Boxor. These two sets are intrinsically tied to the good guys, with the Exo Toa being used by the Toa Mata against the Barak twins, and the Boxors being ridden into battle by the Matoran during the Borok invasion. So, in a world where the bad guys have taken over, we'd need evil counterparts of those two, right? Let's start with the Shadow Exo Toa. The original Exo Toa is mostly dark grey and silver, so naturally all those pieces need to be switched out for black. Well, mostly. If I learned one thing from the Shadow Asanui, it's that these larger sets really benefit from a bit of colour to help break things up, so I'm going to be throwing a few splashes of red into the mix as well. But even so, with over 350 parts in the set, that still leaves a lot of black pieces to track down. Thankfully, most of them are standard Technic pieces, which means the majority are fairly easy to get hold of, but there are a few notable exceptions. Like these old-style ratchet joints used for the hips, which don't exist in black, so annoyingly we have to stick with dark grey. Well, that's only half true. The connector piece came in red with the Barak twins, which is perfect. But the upper half can only be found in white, dark grey or pearl blue, none of which are ideal. But luckily the piece is mostly hidden by the leg armour, so it's not a huge issue. The two tubes that attach on the neck don't come in black either, so I've switched them out for a pair of ribbed hoses. Luckily they're flexible enough not to affect the motion of the mechanism there, so they work just as well. Then we have the tiny toe ball pieces that hold the rubber bands in place. They're light grey on the original, and although a similar piece exists that's super common in black, the attachment is different, which means they don't fit. The ones we need here only exist in one set, the Technic Supercar from all the way back in 1994. Naturally, their rarity means they command a premium on Bricklink, which was annoying for such a tiny piece. And the last problem to overcome was the pins that hold the punching arm together. The design calls for a specific type of pin that only comes in light grey and tan, and although a similar piece does exist in black, it has small ridges that are designed to create friction. This prevents the arm mechanism from working properly, so I had to use custom parts to fill in the gaps. But with those in place, the arm works perfectly. As for the armour, I originally planned to go with gunmetal, as you can see here. This seemed like a great idea on paper, since Makuta himself has gunmetal armour, and it seemed like a nice homage. Unfortunately, while all of the armour panels we need come in that colour, the Parak shield piece used for the Exo Toa's face doesn't, and the final result ended up looking a bit odd. The face just felt lost, almost like it wasn't there, so I went with black armour instead, which I think works a lot better. And with the armour in place, our Shadow Exo Toa is complete and ready for battle. It's definitely a lot more striking in black, especially with those red pieces to help the details pop. It works perfectly as an evil version of the regular set, and the two versions look great together on display. But we aren't done yet. If you're familiar with this set, you'll know that the Exo Toa's main gimmick is to act as a kind of power suit for the Toa figures. Pop the chest open, fold the head back, and then drop in one of your Toa. So here's the Shadow Exo Toa being piloted by Shadow Tahu. He looks great in there, ready to face off against the Barak twins, or any other threats that need punching and or shooting. Any of your other Toa characters will fit as well, so long as they aren't named Onua or Pahatu. But even if you haven't built any Shadow Toa yet, this version of the Exo Toa fits perfectly into the official backstory on its own. The Brotherhood of Makuta had a bunch of these things in their army, so I'm sure at least a few were given a suitably evil redeco once the Brotherhood turned against Matanui. Next up, the Boxor. Again, the set is mostly built from Technic parts, and almost all of them are easily available in black. The only real exception is the two 3-long pins, the same ones we had to replace in the Exo Toa's arm, so if we use a couple more of those, it's possible to build a completely black Boxor. But while pure black is undeniably pretty cool, I really wanted to throw in some red to help tie it to the Exo Toa, and of course Makuta himself, who has a few splashes of red in his larger form. Those Technic cranks used to power the action feature are fairly common in red, so that was an obvious choice to add a bit of colour, plus a few other highlights here and there. I still felt like a bit more red was needed, so I picked up a handful of red knob gears from a custom parts seller on AliExpress. The official colour selection for these gears is actually pretty limited, and it sadly doesn't include red, so custom parts were really the only option here. But they look identical and they work really well. A few more red bits to go inside the head, and things are looking good. For the finishing touches, I used silver for the little Borok teeth that go on the front. They're white on the original, which is no good for what we want here, and although they do come in black, they're super hard to track down in that colour. I already depleted my supply of black ones for the X-ray Boxor, and besides I think the silver works really well here, especially when paired with the silver punching hooks. In fact, I like the silver hooks so much that I went back and switched out the black ones on the Shadow Exo Toa to match, and I'm really happy with the end result. And then there's the flex hose that goes on the arms and feet. I went with red here instead of black, which didn't help the cost since LEGO flex hose is inexplicably expensive, but I really like how the red looks. And with the flexos in place, the Shadow Boxor is ready for action. Well, almost, it still needs a pilot. And who better to sit at the controls than Makuta in his Matoran form? Honestly, I'm not sure how the Shadow Boxor would fit into the storyline, since I'm pretty sure Makuta was powerful enough to defeat the Borok on his own without any help from Nubaru. But maybe he just wanted to feel included. Who knows? Either way, I'm really happy with how these two turned out, especially next to each other on display. But that's pretty much it for this video, so all that's left is to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ta-ta!